The article ran on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, it had been read by most of the people in Hollywood who read that kind of thing, which was most of the people in Hollywood. By Thursday, it had been forwarded, discussed, agreed with by some, dismissed by others, and filed away by the rest in that particular category of professional ammunition that circulates in the industry the way weather circulates, not because anyone acts on it, but because everyone knows the air has changed. The critic's name was David Harwell. He wrote for a publication that had been covering American cinema since 1962, and that carried, in certain rooms, the authority of a verdict. He was 51 years old. He had been reviewing films for 23 years. He had a prose style that was precise and cold and often brilliant, and he deployed it with the accuracy of a man who has learned that the right sentence in the right publication can close a conversation before it opens. The article was not a review. It was an assessment. A career retrospective written not on the occasion of a death or a retirement, but simply because Harwell had decided, in the autumn of 2000, that the moment had arrived to say what he believed, and that what he believed was this. Clint Eastwood, at 70 years old, had made his last significant film. The piece was called The Long Goodbye. It ran to 4,000 words. Clint Eastwood read it on a Thursday morning at his home in Carmel. He finished it. He set it down on the table. He drank his coffee. He did not call anyone. He did not respond to the publication. He did not ask his publicist to draft a letter. He did not mention it in any interview, that year or any year after. He went back to work. Here is the story. Carmel-by-the-Sea, California. Autumn 2000. There is a particular quality to the light in Carmel in October, gray and diffuse, the Pacific pressing the fog inland every morning, burning off by noon, returning by 4. It is the kind of light that makes a man look inward, the kind of light that suits a certain kind of thinking. Eastwood had lived in the area since 1971. He was not the kind of man who made a performance of where he lived. He had chosen the place because it suited him, the quiet, the ocean, the absence of the machinery of the industry, and he had stayed because nothing had happened to change that calculation in 3 decades. He was 70 years old in the autumn of 2000. He had been acting in films since 1955. He had been directing since 1971. He had made 31 pictures as a director. He had won 2 Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director for Unforgiven in 1993. He had received the American Film Institute Life Achievement Award. He had served 2 terms as mayor of Carmel-by-the-Sea. He had built Malpaso Productions from a single picture arrangement into one of the most consistently independent production companies in Hollywood history. None of this was in dispute. Harwell's article acknowledged all of it. What the article disputed was the future. Harwell's argument was not cruel. It was, in its way, almost respectful, which made it more difficult to dismiss than a simple attack would have been. He was not saying that Eastwood had failed. He was saying that the industry had moved, and that the particular kind of picture Eastwood made best, contained, moral, unhurried, built on silence and consequence, had lost its natural audience. He was saying that the directors who had once looked to Eastwood as a model had now surpassed him in critical standing. He was saying that Space Cowboys, released that summer, was a genial picture made by a man coasting on goodwill and legacy. He was saying that True Crime before it, and Absolute Power before that, suggested a director who had made his definitive statement in 1992 with Unforgiven and had been searching, without quite finding, ever since. He used the phrase graceful decline 3 times. He used the phrase earned rest once. He ended the piece with a sentence that had been quoted in every subsequent discussion of the article, in every retrospective written about this period of Eastwood's career, in every film school class that eventually taught the material. Clint Eastwood has given American cinema more than it had any right to ask for. What he cannot give it now is what it needs most: surprise. It was a good sentence. It was the kind of sentence that makes a critic's reputation: precise, not unkind, and in the particular way of such sentences, very difficult to answer with words. Eastwood set the article down on the kitchen table in Carmel on that Thursday morning. He was not the kind of man who required outside confirmation of his own judgment. He had not built a career of 45 years on the opinions of other men, and he was not going to dismantle it on the basis of one, however well constructed. He understood what the article was doing. He understood the grammar of it, the way a well-placed career assessment in the right publication functions not as criticism, but as consensus building, the way it asks other people in the industry to decide whether they agree before the subject of the piece has had a chance to respond. He understood all of that, and he set it down, and he drank his coffee. And then he did something that David Harwell, for all his precision, had not predicted. He read the article again, slowly, with a pen in his hand, not to argue with it, not to find the errors, to find the truth in it. This is the part of the story that requires the most careful attention, because what Eastwood did with Harwell's assessment was not what most men do with a criticism that is partly correct. Most men, most directors, most artists, most anyone who has been told in 4,000 well-chosen words that their best work is behind them, do one of three things. They dismiss the piece entirely and make more of the same. They agree with it and slow down. Or they overreact, make something aggressively different, and lose what they were to begin with. Eastwood did none of those things. He sat with the article for a week. He read it 3 times. He marked the passages he disagreed with. He also marked the passages he didn't. The passage he marked hardest, the one that he underlined twice, that left a small indentation in the paper beneath the pen, was not the final sentence about surprise. It was a single paragraph midway through the piece, where Harwell had written that Eastwood's greatest work had always come from material that unsettled him. That Unforgiven had worked not because Eastwood was comfortable with the Western, but because, for the first time in 30 years of making them, he had found a script that made him genuinely uncertain whether the hero was right. His best films, Harwell had written, are the ones where you can feel him not quite knowing the answer. Eastwood underlined that sentence twice. Then he called his producing partner and told her to clear the schedule. He needed to read scripts. What happened over the following 8 years has been analyzed, taught, debated, and written about in more column inches of film criticism than almost any comparable run of work in American cinema history. In 2003, he directed Mystic River. It received universal critical acclaim. Sean Penn won the Academy Award for Best Actor. Tim Robbins won for Best Supporting Actor. Eastwood received his 5th Academy Award nomination for Best Director. In 2004, he directed $1 Million Baby. It won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, his second time winning both in a single evening, a distinction shared by fewer than a dozen directors in the history of the Academy. At the podium, accepting the award, he was 74 years old. He spoke for 41 seconds. He thanked the crew first. In 2006, he made Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima simultaneously, twin pictures examining the same battle from opposite sides. Letters from Iwo Jima was nominated for Best Picture. It was conducted entirely in Japanese, directed by a man who did not speak the language, and widely considered one of the most formally ambitious things he had ever attempted. In 2008, he directed and starred in Gran Torino. It became the highest-grossing film of his career as a director. He played a man running out of time, who chooses, at the end, not how to fight, but how to stop. It was the kind of performance that only comes from someone who has been thinking for a long time about what it means to run out of time. 4 pictures in 6 years, each one different from the last. Each one built, as Harwell had noted of his best work, on material that genuinely unsettled its maker. David Harwell reviewed all 4 pictures. He gave Mystic River 4 stars. He called it a return to form and, with what reads, in retrospect, as the particular discomfort of a man revising a position he had committed to publicly, described Eastwood as a director who had found, somehow, a second register. He gave $1 Million Baby 4.5 stars. He did not mention the 2000 article. He gave Letters from Iwo Jima 4 stars and called it the bravest thing Eastwood had attempted since Unforgiven. He gave Gran Torino 3.5 stars. He said it was the work of a man who had accepted something most men spend their whole lives avoiding. He never wrote a follow-up to The Long Goodbye. He never addressed the original piece in print. He never issued a correction or a reconsideration in any public forum. He did not need to. The films had already answered him. In 2009, a young journalist interviewing Eastwood for a profile in a film magazine asked him whether he had read the Harwell piece when it was published. Eastwood looked at her for a moment. He said, "Yes." She asked, "Did it bother him?" He was quiet for a few seconds. He looked out the window. Then he said, "It clarified some things." She waited to see if he would say more. He did not. He picked up his coffee. He looked at the next question on her list. He had already said everything that needed saying. He had been saying it for 8 years, one picture at a time, in the only language he had ever trusted. Not argument, not rebuttal, not explanation. Work. Keep your eyes open, your words few, and never stray from what's right. That's Clint's way.